You're lying on the ground, you can't move, your hands are staked into the dirt on either side of an anthill the size of a small hill, and within seconds you feel the first bite, then the second, then 100 more.
This isn't a horror movie, this isn't science fiction.
This is a brutal form of torture that was rumored to be used on real people, and it's tied to the only reported cases in history where insects were deliberately turned into hunters of human beings. Not swarming crops, not defending a nest, hunting. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly which insect did it, who used them as a weapon, and why almost everything you've seen in movies about killer ants is completely fake. Here's the thing nobody tells you, insects don't actually hunt humans. Not as prey, we're too big, too tough, and frankly, not worth the effort for something that survives on other bugs. So when people say insects hunted humans, they usually mean one of two totally different things, and only one of them is real. The first is fiction, the second is history, and the link between them is a lot blurrier than you'd think, because the fictional version got so popular that people now believe it actually happened. Let's start with the myth, because this is where almost every killer bug video gets it wrong. In 1905, a writer named H.G. Wells published a short story called Empire of the Ants, describing intelligent South American ants that used tools, watched humans with calculating eyes, and stripped villagers down to gleaming white skeletons. 3 decades later, another writer, Carl Stevenson, published Leiningen versus the Ants, about a plantation owner defending his land from a river of flesh-eating ants sweeping through the Amazon. That story got adapted into films multiple times, and it's basically the reason every jungle adventure movie has a scene where the hero is chased by a wall of ants. Here's a lesser-known fact: those ants are based on a real species, Eciton, and they're nowhere near as deadly as the fiction suggests. Entomologists who've actually studied Eciton colonies say they focused almost entirely on other insects, not livestock, not crops, and definitely not people. A healthy adult who stumbles into an Eciton raid gets bitten. Sure, it hurts, but they walk away. Getting eaten alive by these ants would require being completely immobilized first, which almost never happens by accident. So the version of history most people picture, screaming villagers, ants flooding through doorways, nothing left but bones, never happened. That's Hollywood, but something did happen, and it's stranger than fiction. Cross the Atlantic to Central and East Africa, and you'll find the actual insect behind the real history. Dorylus, better known as the driver ant, safari ant, or siafu. Unlike the Amazon's Eciton, Dorylus colonies are almost incomprehensibly large. When food runs low, they abandon their underground nests entirely and form marching columns of up to 20 million ants at once, all moving together across the landscape. Picture a river of ants 20 meters wide, and it can take that column an hour just to travel 20 meters. They're slow, which is exactly why a person who can walk away is in almost no danger. But this is where it gets serious. It's the people who can't move who are at risk. Infants left alone in huts, the elderly, the sick, and anyone physically restrained. Wildlife researchers and entomologists confirm that Dorylus is the one ant genus with documented, if rare, human fatalities from actual predation. Not myth, not folklore, but recorded cases. In one well-known case from the Australian continent in 1900, a mining prospector named James Wilson died after red ants attacked him, an incident detailed in period newspaper reporting at that time. That's the biological reality. Now here's the part almost nobody covers, and it's the actual only time this video is named after. Humans figured out, long before modern science explained why, that an immobilized person left on top of an ant colony would suffer immensely and could die. And in widespread local legends and colonial-era lore, that knowledge was turned into deliberate punishment and interrogation. Sensationalized accounts from colonial-era Central Africa often described captives being staked across ant nests as a form of torture, deliberately exploiting the aggressive, carnivorous behavior of driver ants to inflict pain or death on a restrained human being. This wasn't insects choosing to hunt a person the way a predator stalks prey in nature. It was a human decision to place a defenseless person directly on top of millions of ants and let biology do the rest. That distinction matters enormously, and it's the whole reason this qualifies as the only time in history insects hunted humans, rather than just another animal attack story. In nature, ants don't seek out humans as prey. There's no evolutionary reason to. But once a human is staked down and can't escape, the ants respond exactly as they would to any other large, struggling animal caught in their path, as something to overwhelm and consume. Historians researching pre-modern lore note that stories of using ant colonies this way show up across multiple separate cultures and time periods, a grim indicator that more than one civilization independently dreamed up the same brutal method. So the hunt wasn't ants choosing a target, it was humans building the trap and the ants finishing what nature already made them capable of. Now this is a detail that almost never makes it into these type of videos, and it completely reframes everything you just heard. For most communities living alongside driver ants, these insects aren't a threat at all, they're an ally. Many East African farming communities have historically viewed marching columns of Savari ants as beneficial rather than dangerous. Because as the ants pass through a farming area, they devour crop pests, insects, and even large rats before moving on. Farmers have learned to simply step out of the way, let the column pass through a granary or field overnight, and come back to the next morning to find their pest problem solved for free. In other words, the same ants capable of killing an immobilized person are under normal circumstances doing free pest control for entire villages, and it's not just Dorylus that gets misunderstood this way. Fire ants, an entirely different species, accidentally introduced to the United States in the 1930s, have caused documented indoor attacks, including cases where they entered nursing homes and attacked bedridden elderly patients, in at least one case resulting in death. Again, the pattern repeats. It's not insects hunting healthy, mobile humans, it's insects overwhelming people who already couldn't defend themselves. So let's zoom out, because this is the detail that flips the entire narrative on its head. Locust swarms, often lumped into insects attacking humans content because of their biblical apocalyptic imagery, don't hunt people at all. A single desert locust swarm of 80 million insects can eat as much plant matter in a day as 35,000 people would consume, devastating farmland, not flesh. The famous Rocky Mountain locust plague of 1874 covered an estimated 198,000 square miles of the American Great Plains and blotted out the sun for hours, yet not a single historical account describes locusts biting or consuming a person. And that's the twist. The insect swarms most associated with human terror in history, locusts, never hurt anyone. The insect that actually has a documented, if narrow, capability to kill and consume a human being is one most people have never heard of outside of Africa, and the only reason it ever hunted a person in the true sense of the word is because another human being made that outcome possible. So the real answer isn't as simple as insects went on the attack, it's that one specific ant, under of human-made conditions, is the closest thing history has to an insect actually hunting and killing a person, and even then, it needed our help to do it. If this kind of deep dive into the stranger, more accurate corners of nature and history is something you want more of, subscribing is the easiest way to make sure you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment with the wildest insect myth you've ever believed that was true. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.